It's not really about waiting for somebody to tell you, hey, you can do this. It's about saying, hey, I'm gonna do this. Please support me.
Remember, this university doesn't exist without you, and I think students forget that. You know, if we didn't come here, if we didn't pay, there wouldn't be a university. So if there's something you're passionate about, talk about it, fight for it.
The main thing to do is to, in some way, do away with or deconstruct the hierarchical mechanisms that prevent those changes happening. Because every step we take is a small step.
And there is still a stigma around the word activist. If I go and have a meeting with the police or with the council and I'm like, right, I'm an activist, there's this impression that I am going out, gluing myself to roads, smashing up things, when actually I'm creating services.
I feel oftentimes the people that don't have access to art are the ones who need it most. And I feel like for me, art was such a kind of like a sanctuary, and it helped me so much through different traumas.
There was a tangible thing out there now that had made, you know, in the grand scheme of things, a negligible difference, but to somebody it made a pretty big difference, and yeah, that was really nice to see.
Nice. Welcome to London College of Communication's Value Talks, a series where we bring together figures from across different industries to talk about contemporary issues and creativity. Today we'll discuss student activism. How can we use our voices to affect change, and how can we be better allies? Would you like to introduce yourself first?
I'm Abi. I graduated from the Masters in Design for Social Innovation and Sustainable Futures this year, and through that I founded the Accessibility Project.
No.
I'm Alex. I just graduated from Sound Arts and Design here at LCC, and my work has been mostly around the Decolonising Wikipedia network here at UAL.
My name is Nicki. I was also on the longest title ever, MA Design for Social Innovation and Sustainable Futures. We actually get paid by the word when we graduate, so that's why we picked it. But I was a muralist. I've been a muralist since 2009, and I came back to get my master's to make murals eco-friendly and to use them for activism, figure out how to use them for activism and for mental, social, and environmental health.
Nice. Well, first of all, congratulations all on graduating.
Thank you.
I hope are you guys decompressed from a hard year of education?
No, not really.
I feel like I haven't left yet.
Sort of, yeah, I haven't left either, so I work here now.
Nice. Awesome. I'll straight into
next year, so I haven't really left.
Yeah, they're not getting rid of us yet.
Awesome. And can you all explain a bit more about the activism you do and why it's important to you?
Yeah, so all of my activism is sort of through the Accessibility Project, which is looking at social inclusivity, accessibility for those who struggle to integrate into society, so people with disabilities, mental health, and really looking at community integration and how that can be really powerful.
I started working on decolonising the curriculum in the Sound of Music programme back in 2020. I was working with Lucy Panesar, and as part of the work that we did, we set up the Decolonising Wikipedia network because we realised that the democratisation of information was a really useful way to kind of attack what a canon means in an arts kind of sense, and how that can be used as a tool for changing what we take for granted about who artists are and who we kind of look to for inspiration. So that's the kind of angle that I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, similarly, I've been an artist my whole life, and I knew when I was 3 I wanted to be a painter, and I've sort of gotten to this point in my career where I just wanted my painting to be like for as much good as possible. And I feel oftentimes the people that don't have access to art are the ones who need it most. And I feel like for me, art was such a kind of like a sanctuary, and it helped me so much through different traumas and with mental health issues, with physical health issues. It was always like, it always had my back, and it was such a huge outlet for me. So part of what I teach participatory muralism. So I engage communities in co-designing and painting murals together to reclaim their space. And part of that co-designing process is determining like what is important to this community and what do they want to make murals about. And especially because I'm a traveling muralist, it's a lot of listening, and it's not so much about me coming in and saying what I think would be best for the space, but like just how a doctor would diagnose a patient by first asking them what's wrong. I have to do the same thing with murals in order for them to be as meaningful and impactful for the community as possible. So it's using my platform to create a platform for others to discuss those issues and to make art about those issues and to also make that art together. So it's mental health, because I think, you know, engaging in art is therapy, but it's also social health because they're making the art together. And now I'm using only environmentally friendly materials in my murals, because I feel like if you want to truly uplift a community with them, you can't also be destroying the local environment.
To the environment.
And paint is the #1 contributor of microplastics in water systems. And it's also a huge factor with CO2 evaporating when the paint dries, because it's all made out of plastic. But plastic paint was only invented in the 1950s. Everything before that, you know, didn't have plastic in the paint. So like, you know, we just kind of went that way due to convenience. So I'm slowly like breaking down this mural process and making it as healthy as possible for the community and the environment.
Yeah, love that. And I think you all occupy a really special space where you're artists and activists. And how important is it for you to both occupy that space? And what I would like to ask is art activism, you know?
I think it is in general. I think art is a sense of expression, and most forms of activism come from that sense of expression. It's just, for me, my background is graphic design. I also did my degree here in graphic design. And my creative practice became the tool to solve the problems within accessibility. So it was thinking, well, how do we design society? How do we design a community to be accessible? So that's one element of it, is you're designing spaces. But the other element of it is when I'm working with people. So when I'm doing workshops with different individuals in the community, I use art as that sounding board. I'm a fully trained youth worker, and I know from experience that when you ask someone what's wrong, it's really hard to talk about it, and it's really hard to say, well, actually, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z. But if you start creating, and we did a workshop together actually in Southwark called My Story is My Power, and actually by just providing them this creative space and saying, right, write your story, create your story, they did it. But if I'd have sat down with someone like this and said, right, tell me your life story, you'd be like, well, that's a bit, I don't know you, like, you know, so.
It's a bit tough to, all right, I can start.
Yeah. But it's sort of, it's an icebreaker as much as anything.
Yeah.
So it's been really important within all of my work.
Yeah. What about you, Alex?
Yeah, it's interesting the difference where for you the activism stuff comes out of the art itself. I guess for me it's more about that activism side of things informing the art that I make. It's been really interesting to be informed by so many of the people that I've engaged with as part of the work that I've done, and learned so much about so many practitioners who I never would have heard of before. And yeah, it's been really interesting and exciting to kind of come at it through that angle where that's what comes first and then that informs the practice. Yeah, I think I've gained a lot out of it from that. It's cool to like see the different ways that it's been channeled through or a practice has channeled the work itself. It's really cool.
Yeah, with all three of us, I think there's like a major element that is participatory in all of our practices. And I think like I was sort of trained as a fine artist to be like a gallery painter, and that's so much about like personal self-expression. And the deeper I got into my career, the more I realized that it's like bigger than me, and I don't want to just be telling my story. And I had this one mentor that told me, like, you know, I think I was just so excited when I started working with him. I was just like going on about me, And he was like, you're here to learn from me. Like, you have to soak more and ring less. And I was initially like really insulted. And then I realized that the reason I was insulted is because it's true. And so I think this next chapter for me is about like soaking more and ringing less, and using my platform to create communities. And that's like the amazing thing about going back to school sort of later. And I started my MA at 30, and I was just so ready to be around other like-minded people because I had been doing my thing for so long sort of alone. And the participatory muralism that I was doing wasn't really respected by my undergraduate university in the States, because I majored in illustration, and they were like, but you're not even doing the painting. I'm like, yeah, that's the whole point, like, but for them it was like, no, but this isn't yours. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm doing that on purpose. I'm not like trying to get out of painting. That's what my favorite thing to do. I'm trying to give other people the opportunity to paint because I love it so much. I want to share it. And so, the amazing thing about coming back to LCC was getting to meet people like Abi on my course and working together, because now we've got to host a bunch of workshops together, and we have like similar passions but different skill sets, I'd say. So My Story is My Power mural, I told everybody like Abi's the brains behind the operation, and I was just there to like make it look pretty.
Disagree with that. You've got a lot of brains. We just come from it from a very different perspective. I think you sit much more stereotypically in the sort of creative, and as much as I'm a designer, I'm very sort of logical, research focused, and I think that's why we complement each other.
Absolutely.
But no.
Yeah, I love when Abi does my research for me. And
all the legwork. Paint? Yeah, no problem.
And then she comes to me with a great idea. But then also, like, you've been trying to step more away from the graphic design and go more into the social advocacy, and I'm like happy to do that part of it. So we've been getting to work a lot together, and she's not the only person on the course that I met that I've been working with, but I think that's the amazing thing about coming back to school is like you're really paying for the community. It's like the most 100%. Expensive club to belong to.
I completely agree. Yeah, 100%. Even in my course, I think anybody that goes to uni, especially in the UK, was paying a lot of money, and everybody could probably find holes in what they're paying for educationally. But the community you build, and UAL especially is great at this, I think, because he has so many campuses across London, but LCC even just the facility alone. But I always say to anybody can ask, like the community you build at university, it's, especially as an art student, I think it's even more so important, because like the way you guys are saying, you guys made from two different parts of the world. You probably didn't know, you had probably no idea you two at the start of your course would be like, oh, now we're going to work together and we're going to not just create art together, but hopefully commit change, cause people to think differently. That's truly insane. Like just on my front, I've had people that I've met and we're working together, but hopefully, and we've not worked on projects big enough yet to hopefully commit change, or well, imperceivably in my mind. But the fact that you guys have met from university doing that from two different parts of the world is a beautiful advocate for university. So I just wanted to pick more about your, when did you start to realize that activism, or just saying something that was bigger than yourselves, was important in your art? And when, I guess that goes hand in hand with, when did you realize that everything you campaigning for was important to you?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you say obviously it being bigger than yourself, but my activism started with myself. So it started with my own personal experiences in life, and I'd always been sort of interested in sort of design as social impact, and I was trying to navigate that through my bachelor's, and it was sort of working, but it sort of wasn't. And there was also an element of timing when I was ready. But I got into accessibility because I'm disabled myself, and for the entirety of my life, all you hear, especially through like medical models, is, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. And then it dragged me down, and it wasn't actually, I'm grateful to have such a brilliant mum, but my mum sat down and was like, right, but what can you do? And let's focus on that, and then let's build a pathway. And I started to think about that, and then actually it wasn't until COVID happened. And as someone who, you know, I'm 27 next month, so I was 25, 24 when COVID started. It wasn't until I was sat at home and told by my doctors, we can't give you access to the vaccine because your condition is so rare, you don't meet the high risk category, but you can't go out, you need to self-isolate. COVID and you together is a really bad idea. Not that it's great for anyone, but it's sort of, I'd really struggle with it. And I was at home and I was isolating, and my whole entire generation on Facebook, on Instagram, were like, it only affects the vulnerable, it only affects people over 90, you know, let's go to secret parties and all that lot. And not that I want to make it politically about COVID, but sitting there, it was the rhetoric of it only affects the vulnerable, and this complete disregard of disability, and this complete disregard, well, you're not needed in society because you're vulnerable. So let's just all go out to work. Yet here I am, you know, bachelor's educated, about to become master's educated. I've worked since I was 17. It's sort of, we do give back, and we are sort of a hidden sort of power force because we have to really fight to have that normal life. That I went into my master's and I was like, right, I'm going to spend the entire time focusing on changing the rhetoric around what disability is. Would I have gone so passionately to it if COVID hadn't have happened? I don't think so. I think
But then thank God
it
COVID
woke
did
that
happen,
it woke that fire up. But all of my work separate to that, I've done other pieces of activism, especially within youth work and sort of sexuality and gender. It comes from a personal basis, and then it's like taking a step back and being like, right, it's not about me, it's about this community. And then, you know, I help others. So if I've got friends who are activists in other fields, that it's not appropriate for me to be saying, you know, let's do this, but I'll stand by you and I'll be your ally, just as I've got, you know, heterosexual friends who do that when I'm doing stuff for the LGBT community. So it definitely starts with yourself, I think, and then it becomes much bigger than you.
I don't know, it's interesting, I guess, because community always runs so in parallel with it at every moment of the journey, I think. Just the act of soaking and not ringing is a community building act in itself. And I really like that phrase. I'm gonna use that.
You have it.
Thanks. So yeah, it's kind of hard to pinpoint, I guess. But certainly I do remember being in the first year of my degree and thinking, why can't I name any more than like 3 canonic female sound artists? And then it kind of spurred from there. It was like, there must be women doing this, but I need to go and find them. There must be so much more that's hidden, that's not kind of taught canonically. And yeah, that's kind of what spurred it. And then it was an exercise in those of us who were interested in that, getting involved with it and trying to figure out where all that representation was that was so lacking. So yeah, it starts with the self, but I think so quickly it becomes bigger than that.
Yeah.
It's almost imperceptible.
Yeah.
At least for me, I thought it was other people were involved in terms of what I was interested in and what I was sharing with others.
Yeah, I love that. What about you, Nicki?
Yeah, very similar story. I'm from Miami, and in Florida, of all the states, Florida has the 3rd least funding for students in the country, and we actually spend more per prisoner than we do per student. So the schools in Florida are just really, really awful, and they do have an amazing art magnet program, which if you apply and you get in, they're free. And I was super lucky to have a grandma who was a graphic designer. She got her graphic design degree in 1989.
Nice, congrats.
And she sort of raised me, and so I was, you know, she was older when she was raising me, so she couldn't run around, but she could give me art assignments to do just all day long. And because of her, I was able to apply for all these art schools and get into them. And so I got this amazing, like, golden ticket, basically. It was a free art education from 5 to 18. And I just, like, looking back, I just shudder to think what would have happened if I hadn't got that free art education. And I was so lucky to sort of win that golden ticket. And then when it was my sister's time, to apply for the same schools, I was like, well, she's not a visual artist, but she can sing and she can act and she can dance. And so maybe there's one of my friends that is at my art school in the musical theater side of things that could mentor her. And maybe I could mentor one of her friends if they want to get into art. And so I started this mentorship program where I partnered the teenage students with the younger students who wanted to apply for those same schools that they had gotten into. And the program was, like, so successful that they actually shut us down because they thought our students were cheating. And it was a free program. And so everyone was really skeptical about it because they were like, why, how are they getting in? This is a free program. And I purposely targeted schools with students, a high percentage of students on welfare, and kids who wouldn't have the opportunity otherwise for their parents to pay for art lessons or pay for dance lessons or pay for music lessons. And so I went around and, like, met with all the principals of all these different schools and did my speech and my flyer and started this whole program. And I realized, like, my mission is so much more than me making art. It's about me giving as many people as possible the opportunity to use art as their outlet and as their voice, and then honing that superpower in everybody else. Because I think it's such a powerful tool, especially for people who didn't have the best opportunities growing up to create opportunities for themselves, whether it's because you're disabled or, from a low-income home or there's just so many different things that art can really help with.
Completely agree. 100%.
And then you get to go to amazing schools like this and build communities of people where everyone has their story. And I think it's like it just becomes so much richer every time you add one more person. It's like it multiplies exponentially every time you get, like, one more person to tell their story. And it's just, again, it's just been a mission. Like, starting as a teenager, I just started to realize, like, how lucky I was to have that outlet. And I was just so scared of, like, what would have happened to me without it. And then how many other kids, could I sort of, help find that in themselves. And not just kids too. I think it's never too late. Like, I was doing this participatory mural the other day in Somerstown, and this, like, 80-year-old man who's lived in Somerstown his whole life was painting with me all day, every day. And he was asking me all these questions about America, like, why do you cut, and then put the fork down and then pick it up with the other hand, and he's asking me all these questions, and, like, why do you call it a line and not a cue, and all these things. And I was like, look, I'm just a painter, like. But at the end, he was like, he was thanking me. And I came into his community he's been in for 80 years. I'm from somewhere else. I'm asking him to paint with me. And then he was thanking me as I was leaving. And I was like, no, thank you. Like, thank you for letting me into your home and into your space. And, with my crazy ideas about making eco-friendly murals, and him just being open and receptive to that was incredible at his age too. So I think it's never too late. I always joke with, the parents will sometimes come and drop off their kids. And I'm like, no, this is for you too. Like, you pick up a paintbrush, you stay. Because I think everyone needs, some kind of creative outlet.
100%. Couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And just to pick up on your point, I mean, how you influence that eight-year-old. My question here is, why are students' voices so powerful? But I think it's bigger than that, right? It's why are young people's voices so powerful? And are we a product of of the time in terms of diversity, thoughts, issues, exposure to different things? Or Do you think it's things like art school, or what makes it? What is driving young people now, and hopefully changing the older generations to pursue their ideas of activism in so many different ways, in so many amazing ways? So, what do you think?
Really? Yeah, I think it's. I think a lot of it is around knowledge, right? I speak to my family about this a lot because I always joke with them that I don't really know how I happen to be who I am because I come from a very right-wing family, and then here's me, the gay disabled artist activist, like poster child of the family.
Everything they love, right?
Yeah, exactly. But but I have these conversations with them, and I think one, we're more curious. We don't just read the Daily Mail and cite it as if it's biblical. But the knowledge is there, the access is there. And I've had a lot of conversations recently because obviously it's 50 years of Terence Higgins and the AIDS epidemic, and my parents lived through that. And you're watching all these documentaries, and I'm like, how did you accept this? I'm like, one, the 80s, as much as it was the most homophobic era of it is, you all look camp as hell.
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
like
that's
you
so
can't
true.
tell who's what. So it's like, how does this work? But how can you sit there and listen and not question? And they always said, well, the information wasn't there. And to an extent, I do agree with that. They had their radio, they had the TV, and they had the newspaper and what the government was saying. But they couldn't go onto the internet, they couldn't find other people's perspectives, they couldn't explore different points of view. If you came from a certain area, like I come from Surrey and I come from a little town in Surrey, you have that community and you have that community view. And if you don't move outside of that, you never experience anything else. Whereas you don't have to move now because it's all at your fingertips. And I think that comes onto students' voices, is why university is so important. Is you come to university, especially if you go to university in the city, and you are automatically surrounded by loads of different people that you wouldn't have met or wouldn't have spoken to. And I think it was very prevalent on our course. The one thing I started in our course, literally the first activity we had to do was essentially this survival toolkit, which is literally just present your life. Like, what bad things have you gone through? What good things have you gone through? What are you passionate about? And after the day, we all knew each other very well, but we all came from very different backgrounds and different walks of life, and those conversations continue.
I'm having like nightmares about my toolbox now. Thanks for bringing that up.
I liked your
Mine
toolbox
was like
great.
so not the assignment. Like everyone brought like, yeah, my glasses, my favorite pen, mine was like a color wheel. Like,
yeah.
I didn't understand the assignment.
But it's sort of, it's about, we all come from different perspectives. That's what you're passionate about. Some people went really deep with it, some people didn't, and that's fine. But I think one is it's about the curiosity and the seeking for knowledge. But I also feel like our generation and the generations below us now as well have had enough.
Yeah.
Have had enough of all of the issues that are just happening in the world. You can't turn the TV on without someone being killed wrongly, murdered. You can't. The fires everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, look at this week. So okay, I'm going to be the British person that moans about the weather, but
no, but
it
there's
doesn't
moaning
get
about the weather,
to that,
and then there's
that
what you
And the
say.
apocalypse as
Yeah,
well, that
yeah.
goes alongside it.
Yeah, exactly.
and COVID and the sort of racism's getting better, homophobia's getting better. It's not. It's just becoming institutionalised, so it's becoming hidden. And I think we're a generation that has become angry about this, and I think that's misunderstood by older generations.
Yeah. I think we see through a lot of that stuff, like the stuff where it's been hidden, and maybe it's been hidden for decades, and we somehow have figured out between ourselves how to identify it, amongst ourselves rather. And I guess it's like you say, with the availability of information, and that kind of keen eye for identifying that kind of thing, it's almost like one big community where we all know that the strongest thing that we have is, it sounds really cliche, but coming together, I guess, and
No, it's not. It's
No,
not.
it's true.
figuring it out for ourselves.
I think
Completely great.
uni time is like almost like dog years. It's like because so much growth happens in
Yeah.
such a short amount of time.
Wow, that's
That's very true.
wow. I've never thought of that. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, when you start to when you end.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing. Our course was only 15 months.
Yeah, if that, I mean, you know, the summers and things, you take all of that out.
Yeah, and COVID time too is kind of like dog years.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people got married, got divorced, had babies, like boom,
Yeah.
boom, 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 because it was like
all of that in one.
and I think it was sort of, I mean, and we had the lovely experience of going to uni during COVID, so it was even more. It was an incubation period that was then doubled because we had the experience of COVID and uni at the same time. But it was like in the States, Black Lives Matter happened once COVID hit because now everybody's sitting at home and they're not distracted by like their daily grind, their 9 to 5. All the other distractions were kind of turned off, and then people had time to sit and be like, you know, shit's fucked up.
Yeah.
We got to do something about it. It's
Yeah.
not a coincidence that Black Lives Matter happened during COVID, you know, and I think
It was bubbling a long time before that.
Yeah.
Especially from what I saw in the States anyway, there was just a long
it just
history.
boiled
and,
over.
It
It just boiled over.
I don't want to say
during COVID.
fortunately, but there's no fortunate to any death. But the fact it just happened in a moment where everybody was sat at home,
We're
it
ready.
just made it just, you couldn't ignore it anymore.
Yeah. And then coming to uni like on the tail end of that and COVID, I think we just had this incredible experience of like everyone was just so ready to like sink their teeth into things that just really mattered, because you just realize like when COVID happens and stuff that like, oh, what, we're all so close.
Yeah.
We're also like, this life is so precious. We're all so close to losing it at any moment. And it's like, you really need to make your minutes, your seconds count. And I think, you know, with the States and with Black Lives Matter, is just sort of like a representation of all of these other things.
Yeah.
And then like coming to uni on the tail end of that, it was kind of incredible, because now I feel there's a huge shift happening. Like all of these different universities, my partner came out at the same time and went to a different university at the same time. And so there's this whole decolonizing the curriculum happening. There's this whole movement towards sustainability and design happening. And it's kind of like, I feel with Abi and I, we all sort of have to pick like which one are you gonna, you can't save the whole world. You have to sort of pick a lane and decide like which is gonna be my fight. And it's hard to choose.
Yeah.
It really is hard to choose.
Yeah, thank you, Nicki. Your point was, you're great, and like you do have to pick your fights. You can't do everything, but then at the same time, a lot of these things that you're talking about bleed into each other. I do feel, and I wanted to ask, what roles did you take on when you was at university in terms of activism, and what roles do universities have to play in activism? Because I think there is a special bond created at university between you and your friends and your peers, and I think a lot of the, definitely for me, a lot of the ideas I formed and now take on was formed leaving my hometown, coming to university in those three to 3.5 years. So yeah.
I think we've had a long gap where universities haven't. So I think there's been, you know, we had the Bauhaus, which was very much the forefront of change.
Still very forward thinking even now.
And a lot of initiatives and a lot of education is still based off of that. And then I think university sort of went silent and were like, right, we're not going to get involved and we're going to sort of step aside away from this. And I think in the last few years, thankfully, universities have been playing a much bigger role, and UAL has, even in the sort of the 4 years that I've been involved from when I started, or 5 years actually, 2017 to now, the jumps that UAL have taken to really sort of be like, well, actually, no, okay, we are a large institution in London. What should we be doing? Is a really good thing, and I think a lot of that is a driving force from the students. And I think when I lecture to students and when I'm talking to students now, it's more of a, remember, this university doesn't exist without you. And I think students forget that. You know, if we didn't come here, if we didn't pay, there wouldn't be a university. So if there's something you're passionate about, talk about it, fight for it. and I think on the initiatives, and there's loads out there, I decided to be out of the box. And I was like, right, I'm going to create my own initiative. Don't want to do the ones that are out there. But in my case study for my master's was essentially proving that LCC is inaccessible, which is a huge statement. Now, I'll back that with I am pro LCC out of all of UAL. I waved that banner with pride.
Come on.
You know, but there were so many hidden issues at LCC. We're an old building. It's falling down a little bit. You know, lifts don't work. But it's sort of, how do we like create that accessibility? And if we can't do it physically, how can we do it socially? And you know, it was a huge, daunting task. But I took it all the way to the Vice Chancellor. And that only happened because I sort of went out through my research. You know, I'd spoken to essentially 300 students and about 100 members of staff and sat them down and like, well, what do you like about LCC? And, you know, you get all of the stuff that we all do, the community, the environment, the friends, you know, tutors. And it's like, what don't you like? And how do you improve that? And I collated this all, and then I had to pitch it to management, which was the most daunting time of my life, because it's like, right, you don't really see these people. Yeah. And it's like, right, I'm now going to tell you that LCC is inaccessible. This is what I think you should do about it. Now, thankfully, because I'd done all of that legwork before, they were so receptive, and, you know, we are working together now to improve LCC's accessibility whilst we're still in this building, and sort of have been brought on to sort of advise in terms of the new building, how do we make that accessible? And I think it's possible. I think we automatically think as students we can't make change to the institution, and I think historically that has been correct. There have been previous sort of management in universities generally where it's a hierarchy of, no, I'm the lecturer, I'm the programme director, I'm the dean, I don't want to listen to you, you're just the student. It's changing. And if you've got that voice and you've got something that you want to change about your university, like anything in the world, it's like you've got to prove it. I knew LCC was inaccessible as a disabled person, but I've got to prove that it's not accessible for others. And then once I've got that, if you put it in front of someone, they can't deny it. And that's why I've always been more of a silent activist, I think, especially growing up, because growing up I was very introverted, had so severe social anxiety, so sort of go to a protest or something was like my worst nightmare. That has changed as I've got more confident. But it's more about, well, what change can I make that it's quiet, but actually it has a huge impact.
You're going to see change, yeah.
So yeah, it's been a journey, and it still hasn't finished. I'm still very much working in accessibility in LCC.
And thankfully we're all seeing the benefits of it slowly and surely.
Yeah, to jump on, sorry.
No, continue.
To jump on Abi's point, having to pick a lane, it's like, I also have a disability, and so I love, you know, personally, Abi's project, but I also know that she's going to take care of it. Like, so it's like, I don't have to fight that fight now because now I met someone that's fighting that fight for me. So then it frees me up, and, you know, we work together and I support her as much as I can, but now I don't have to worry about that so much because I know Abi's going to take care of it. So now it frees me up to sort of fight a different fight. And we do work together, but we're definitely in separate lanes. And with what Abi was saying about, you know, the design of LCC, just so ironic, it's a, you know, a design school, and like the building is seriously lacking some design. But I found out through my research into murals that white walls are actually like detrimental to your eye health and your mental health. It's bad for anxiety, and it's bad for being able to focus, you know, physically focus, which then leads to mentally not being able to focus. So now I'm trying to get murals in LCC, and I've done one already. Another one's coming up, and now I've been asked to do one at all the universities. So like my grandma used to say, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. you know? And I think that like a lot of people just maybe don't think they can because no one has said, hey, here, you can do this. It's not really about waiting for somebody to tell you, hey, you can do this. It's about saying, hey, I'm going to do this. Please support me.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I'm gonna do this regardless.
Yeah.
So you're gonna see it.
Yeah.
You know, I think because
it's like I could do it here.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
So if you want, I can do this here, or I can just go do this somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I've had some amazing support from professors here, and like, I could be doing it somewhere else, but I do get to do it at LCC, which is amazing because, obviously LCC is now a part of my journey, and now I get to be a part of it. And I think that's like, really, if there's any message that comes out of this, I want students to know that like you do have the power to make the change. You just have to you have to have the audacity to think you can. And I think like, the audacity is sort of an art form in and of itself. All of these great artists from history, they had the audacity. I call it like the Obama factor. Like he had the audacity to think he could actually be the first Black president, but he did it. But he had to start with that audacity. He had to start with like that confidence, the charisma to think that Abi thinks that she can actually make LCC accessible. I mean, that's not an easy task, but she actually thinks she can do it, and that's why she's able to do it. And I think it's so hard. Like we feel like, oh, students were here to learn from the university. I think the university has so much to learn from us.
Yeah.
I think that's when you said, what can universities do? I think it is that. It's to do with, like, institutions naturally resist change, no matter how...
That's why they're called institutions.
Well, yeah.
No, but not to even be ironic, but it's true.
No.
Yeah.
And I guess, like, the main thing to do is to, in some way, do away with or deconstruct the hierarchical mechanisms that prevent those changes happening. Because every step we take is a small step in many cases, but it's about allowing those to happen, not allowing them to be blocked by bureaucracies and...
It's a slow process a
lot
lot
of
of
the
the
time. Process, yes. Yeah. But I think that's the main thing that universities can do is allow that to happen, because no one's trying to make anyone's life worse. Every step is for a beneficial reason, essentially. It's about where a university places themselves in that journey, I guess. Do they want to be on the right side of it, or do they want to just let you do it somewhere else? Because either way, it's going to happen, like you said. The initiatives that I was part of, I started working as a student changemaker back in 2020 with Lucy Panesar. It was kind of her project. She was at the helm. And yeah, I was working in the sound and music program to try and embed decolonization in the curriculum with a view to like making not with a view to making sure that every piece of work ever was about racism and anti-racism, which is, I think, why there was a lot of resistance, because some people thought we were trying to change the face of the course. We were just, the overall aim was to make sure that it was a concrete consideration in the way that things were run. So that's how I kind of got properly involved with it. And then as part of that, we set up the Decolonizing Wikipedia network. So there we kind of identified that such a huge platform as Wikipedia has the capacity, given how widely used it is and that it's free, has the capacity to really spearhead a lot of the change we wanted to see in what a canon is, what it contains, and to what extent we actually need a canon. What should we just kind of do away with it entirely? So yeah, through that we started building up workshops and resources and kind of guiding people, helping them to become Wikipedia editors, not just to edit, but to identify what was missing, which is, I think, the biggest kind of barrier, is not knowing when something's not there.
Yeah.
Because how are you supposed to know?
Yeah, exactly.
And then there's a whole lot of ethical considerations around if something isn't on Wikipedia, perhaps there aren't enough primary sources about it in the first place, and there's a reason for that, and it's like chicken and egg kind of thing.
Of course.
So it's like trying to interrogate the reasons why people aren't always represented, and as best we can, trying to rectify that. It's an ongoing process, but the network is still alive and well. And yeah, hopefully that we can continue to.
Yeah, kudos to you guys, man. One thing I wanted to ask you guys is a bit off script, but do you like being called activists? And the reason why I asked that is because, and I'll bring this to myself, like, I wouldn't, in the sense of if you went on my socials, it's not like I talk about race, but I talk about race because I'm black. Like the further I grow, the further I go in my career, I always say that if you're black, you're political. It doesn't matter if you are not anything or if you go and just be a regular person or if you go and be a success. Football's a great example. I'm a massive football fan. Raheem Sterling scores a goal tomorrow. But the next day, a black boy gets killed. He'll get asked about it. It's like, well, Harry Kane doesn't get asked when, God forbid, something happens to a boy in Cheshire. It's just like, but if you're black, you're political. And it's funny listening to all your stories. I'm fascinated by them. But I wonder is it just like, I feel like these are just things, these are innate. Like the way you were talking about, these are innate in you. It's just like, we need to change. So yeah, just quickly, do you like being called activists?
I don't overly use it. And the reason I don't use it is because, and it comes back to silent activism. So at the moment, the community that I live in, I am looking at how we make that community more accessible and how do we promote and improve community integration. So that means that my stakeholders that I'm currently working with are the council, the police, the schools, the NHS, churches, and there is still a stigma around the word activist. If I go and have a meeting with the police or with the council and I'm like, right, I'm an activist, there's this impression that I am going out gluing myself to roads, smashing up things, when actually I'm creating services. So it really depends what situation I'm in, whether I use the word activist or advocate.
I think advocate is my favorite word. Yeah.
So it's an interesting one. If the stigma changed, would I use it more?
Yeah.
But then should I question myself, should I use the word activist to break the stigma? Because then it's like you're seeing me as an activist, but you haven't got that stereotypical impression of me. It's an interesting one, but I also know that if I go into certain meetings, I am not going to get to where I need to, and it's all about like the signification of communication and how I present myself. So I very rarely use the word.
I've never been referred to as an activist before today, I don't think. Yeah, I don't really like it that much.
I used to use it a lot. I used to say I'm an artist activist because I'm activating art in communities, literally. Yeah. But now I say that I'm an advocate for like mental, social, and environmental health through murals. Yeah. But I am a climate advocate at LCC. So again, I think that's the friendlier word. I think activism sort of comes with like an angry connotation.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
It has like a negative side, where I think advocate is like the positive side of the same meaning. But I am a climate advocate for LCC, and I was also on the climate design studio, which were at CSM, Sustainable Designers. And I'm now part of the ADAL committee, which is working to embed sustainable design across the curriculum of the design school. So again, it's like institutionalized advocacy, but it's like you have to sort of like, slay the monster from within. And I think it's so much about like communicating and about saying like, I'm here to help and like work with you. I'm not trying to work against you. Because in order to really make that change, you have to be able to have the conversation. And if you come at it with like negativity or with aggression, then you're not going to be heard. But if you say like, I want to help, I'm an advocate, I'm here to sort of, build bridges, not burn bridges. I think it's almost like it needs a rebranding, the word activism. I used to use it a lot more, but now I'm leaning more towards advocate. And it actually started because when I would describe Abi's project, I would say she's an accessibility advocate. And then I was like, wait, is that the word I should be using for myself as well? But it's like almost easier to talk about other people's work than it is to explain your own, I think. So when I would talk about, I paint these murals with the community and I have an accessibility advocate that I consult with. in reference to Abi, and then I started using that word more for myself as well.
100%. Yeah, so for everything you guys advocate, what is your proudest achievement in that?
Do you know, I think recently, especially all of the work I've been doing at LCC and sort of coming to that conversation about hierarchical ways that universities are, and the fact that a lot of students are met with resistance when they're trying to make the change, was asking to be the graduate student speaker at our recent graduation. And it wasn't just the proudest moment because I was standing there and, you know, I could speak to all of the graduating speakers, but I felt recognised by the university that they believed in my work and they believed in me, and they wanted to keep that relationship. And it was a real wake-up moment that, okay, they're listening and we're working together and they get it. So I felt like I'd succeeded in that moment.
That was probably also my proudest moment, was getting to watch her be the student speaker. Because I, like, from the second I met Abi, I think I told you I was going to work for you one day, and she said, no, we're going to work together. Like, you're going to work with me, not for me. But I felt validated that, like, the university picked the person I had picked. And she made me cry for like 20 minutes after her speech. I walked up to her mom and I was like, I'm so proud of her. But yeah, it was a really validating moment for me as well, that, like, you know, the person I chose to work with and to befriend, like, was recognized by the university. And yeah, it was like so much more. I feel like I'm getting teary-eyed now just talking about it. It was so much more special that day, getting to see her do her speech. And, like, even my partner, I was telling her mom the other night, he'll get out of the shower and be like, and another thing about Abi's speech. The reason it was so good is because like, it wasn't self-indulgent. It was super inspiring. She told her story, but it wasn't about her. It was really about her inspiring everybody to advocate for the causes that they believe in. And you know, like I said, you can't fight every fight, but you can inspire people to fight their fights.
Yeah.
And I think that's what her speech was about.
The first time that somebody in the Decolonizing Wikipedia network published an article that they'd written, I was really excited about that, because it was something that we'd built as a team. Yeah, it was really nice to see that, like, there was a tangible thing out there now that had made, you know, in the grand scheme of things, a negligible difference, but to somebody it made a pretty big difference, and yeah, that was really nice to see.
Nice. Well, you've all made beautiful pictures for what you want to see in the world, so I would love to just encapsulate that. We need a new Prime Minister, so I would put you three forward, please. Our current crop isn't great. But yeah, what change would you want to see in the world? Yeah, where'd you start?
I think within my own work, I'll just focus on that, because otherwise we'll be here all day. The three main things that I work with is accessibility, disability and community integration. Disability's really simple one, is that disability shouldn't be seen as a lack of ability, it's just different. With accessibility and community integration, they work together. I want to see a day where we're not talking about it, it's just there, it just exists. And I'm very aware that that's probably not going to happen in my lifetime, but I want to be at a point when, you know, when I step away and when I retire, that I'm passing the baton on, but we've moved forward and we continue that journey, because access is so different for everyone, but it shouldn't be this huge topic in 2022 that if you're in a wheelchair, you can't get into a building. If you're blind, you can't cross the road. If you're autistic, that it's not picked up until you're 30. You know, should be so much more simplified, and we should be so much further than we are. But I hope we get there one day. We
will, for sure.
I mean, there's so many issues. But I guess an overarching thing is I hope to see more, like, community organising and building. I think that is probably the most tangible way to fight a lot of those issues. So yeah, that's kind of I guess that's not the main goal, but that's maybe the next step.
Yeah, I think like less red tape would be really nice.
Yeah.
Because I think there's so many people just get, they lose momentum because there's just so much, like when you want to do something different and new and make change, there's so many steps in the process. I mean, for me, getting permission to paint a mural can take years to go through all risk assessments and getting the permission for the building, and there's all these things, and it's just like I'm just trying to do something nice, like, and I think so many activists have that problem, activist advocates, where it's like they have the best intentions, and then there's just so many things getting in their way, and it's for no other reason than people are afraid of change, and like, well, it would be a little extra work for me if I had to do this paperwork. So I think just less red tape would be really nice, giving people the opportunity to make those changes before they lose momentum and steam and give up. And I happen to be super, super stubborn, and I think that's a really vital, what's it called? It's a good thing. I think advocates and activists, they need to be angry, they need to be stubborn, they need to be really, passionate. And sometimes those are seen as negative things, but it takes that to get through all the red tape sometimes.
Yeah. So thank you, Nicki. Unfortunately, we haven't got a lot of time. I'd love to speak to you guys all afternoon, but I guess the next question is how can people make change, and how can the younger generation follow in your footsteps and carry on that baton like you mentioned?
Sure, I think it comes to something that I saw. I had a youth worker when I was younger, and they sat me down, and all they said was focus on what you can change, not what you can't. And I think if we all did that, if we all looked at ourselves and just focused on what we can do, then the world would be a better place, quite simply.
100%.
Could not put it better myself.
Yeah, I think don't wait until you feel ready or brave. Just do it scared, is my motto. You'll never feel ready, you'll never feel brave enough, but like you do it and then it's done, and then you realize it wasn't so bad and you can move on to the next thing. So just do it scared.
100%. 100%. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
This is LCC Talks. Thank you, guys.